Podcasting from the Chicagoland area, this is Game On with Jackson Stuart, where we discuss men's lifestyle, focusing on sex, fitness, relationships, business, and more. We'll be interviewing the best of the best, the hot shots, and the rising stars in the worlds of modeling, fitness, cooking, and more. Influencers who are discussing keeping it sexy while at the top of their game. I'm your host, Jackson Stuart. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the game.
Follow Game On with Jackson Stuart on YouTube at Game On with Jack, on the official blog www.gameonwithjack.blog, and at the news store www.gameonwithjack.shop. Keep it sexy and game on.
What if you could be a better player for the cost of one more cup of coffee a month? Get access to a growing library of lit erotica, behind-the-scenes action, and player's guides with tips on drinking, cooking, fitness, dating, sex, and life after dark. Low tier rate while offer lasts. Patreon.com, Game On with Jack. Keep it sexy and game on.
This is Dale Valor.
This is Pamela Ross.
This is Trinasia.
And you're listening
to
Game On with Jackson Stuart.
To Game On with Jackson Stuart.
Game On with Jackson Stuart. Killing them!
The game requires men to be men. More than that, it requires true players to be true men. It challenges us in ways that shake loose the men from the boys, and even then, real men from posers. In today's world, being a man is stuck between the shouting of toxic masculinity or the whispering of quiet simping. Our guest this evening will help us navigate those choppy waters. Damian Andrews is a CEO, international speaker, philanthropist, and father who has dedicated his life to empowering individuals and organizations to reach their full potential. From his early days serving in the elite Special Air Service Regiment, SAS, of the Australian Army, to his role as a corporate recovery specialist, Damian has honed his skills in overcoming challenges and driving operational excellence. As the founding CEO of the Family Peace Foundation, Damian is committed to creating a harmonious relationship and fostering safe environments for individuals and families. He believes that global peace begins at home, and through his advocacy, he inspires individuals to embrace empathy, compassion, and effective communication. He is also the founder of Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit, where he demystifies the complex steps to business growth and offering simple yet powerful strategies. Furthermore, Damian is the visionary founder of Share.Care, an inclusive global community that shares experiences, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Additionally, Damian Andrews is the driving force behind Be Manly and the Legends of Humanity. This fellowship of inspiration empowers boys and men to embrace their unique qualities, unlocking the full power of their manhood. Damian encourages courageousness, intelligence, sensitivity, compassion, and kindness as essential attributes for personal growth and positive impact. Damian Andrews is also our guest this evening. All right, guys, you've heard the introduction and biography. Now join me in welcoming to Game On the brilliant, the powerful, the patient, because of all of the planning we've done, and the driven Damian Andrews. Damian, how are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. It's a great honor to be here and share with your listeners and talk to them. Thank you.
The honor is all mine. Thank you very much. So first up, tell the audience what platform and by what name they can most find you.
Finding me is pretty simple. Just in any search engine, write Damian Andrews, and I'll be, as far as, well, last time I looked, on every link on the front page. Who looks beyond the front page? But just certainly put me in there, or you can go to damianandrews.com. You can find me there, which is my main business website. And for my foundation, I have Share.Care, which is SHAIR.care. That's the website as well, which stands for Strong, Healthy and Inspiring Relationships. You'll find details about the organisation, which is a global community sharing experience, strength and hope to create strong, healthy and inspiring relationships. And we've just recently launched the Be Manly subset of that, which is not on the page is not there by the time this goes to air. It might be, but you can find, if you go to YouTube and put in Be Manly and the Legends of Humanity, you'll find our the Be Manly page there, and you can also find it under Patreon under patreon.com/Be Manly.
Yeah, we'll make sure we run all those links with your show. Now, for people who don't know, where are you from and where did you grow up?
I'm in Melbourne, Australia at the moment. I grew up in a small country town in country Victoria. Spent most of my time riding my bike around and going off jumps and doing kiddie things. And then I was at school, and my dad said that I wasn't allowed to leave because I didn't like being at school. I liked learning, but I didn't like being at school. And my dad said I wasn't allowed to leave school unless I had a job. And about I think 2 weeks after that, the Army recruitment people came around to my school, and I signed up and I joined the Army, and I travelled around and did a bunch of things moving away from home.
Now, how do you go from little Damian Andrews in the country, riding his bike around, doing jumps, to the Army, to what I believe may be the longest biography I've ever written? I mean, I've ever read from a guest. That's by no means an insult. You have a wide variety of experience and background. How do you go from, small kid in the country to the Army, to several organizations that you're the CEO of, plus this initiative of empowering men to be not just men, but to be the right kind of men? Like, what's that journey?
The journey was probably from the beginning was more getting away from things. I didn't want to be at school, and I wanted to get away from that. That's why I joined the Army. And when I was in the Army, I realized very quickly that running around the bush, Australia only has one bush. We don't have a forest. We just have the bush, with lots of big bugs and things like that you know about. So don't come to Australia. It's very scary. No, just kidding. It's a beautiful place. And I realized quickly that wasn't really what I wanted to do. And at the end of basic training, you have an options of different things that you can do or choose to do, but there's only a limited number of what were the good jobs, working engineering, signals, those kind of things. Everyone else went to infantry, which was more running around the bush. And there was one position no one was going for, and I was 18. So what does an 18-year-old male think about at that age is women. And the position was a chef's position. And I thought, girls like guys that can cook. So that's a great idea. 2, it gets me out of going to the infantry. And a long third was maybe I could use this as a career if I ever got out of the Army. So I went to the chef school as part of the Army. And while I was there, one of the instructors asked a friend of mine who was in my course with me, did he want to go to Perth? And I said, he said no, he'd been to Perth. And I just put up my hand and said, yeah, I'll go to Perth. Not thinking about it. And Perth is the other side of the country from where I was growing up and again running away. That sounds like a good place to go. And they said, well, if you pass the psychological test, you can go. I didn't even think about it. I just went, yeah, no problem. I'll do it. So I went and passed the psychological test. I went and did the psychological test. I passed it, jumped in my car, drove across the country, so equivalent from New York to LA in my car, across the Nullarbor, and got to Perth. It turns out I'm posted to the SAS, which is Australia's Special Forces. So I went there as a chef, but I also got to do all the Special Forces stuff. So I'm jumping out of airplanes and going submarine diving, rock climbing, abseiling, firing rocket launchers, doing all special operations stuff, counter-terrorism. And so I had a lot of fun doing that. That was really good. But then I started to shift my thinking, and I looked at people 10 years my senior, and I went, oh, that's not really where I want to be. I didn't really know where I wanted to be. And I decided that I was going to resign and get out of the Army. And I was fluffing around in Perth for a bit, and a friend said, "Oh, there's good money up in the mine sites." So again, moving towards something this time, it was. So I applied to. I found who are the main companies that worked up there. There was 5 companies, and I wrote them a letter of application. And this was, I'm older than I look in my profile, and that's not been modified. I'm just one of those lucky people that looks younger than they actually are, and. Which wasn't so lucky when I was a kid, but as an adult, it's great. And
it's all that bush living.
So maybe that's what it is. So I wrote an application out, and it was handwritten to each of the 5 companies, and sent that off. And then the next day, I wrote another application out and sent it off to the same companies. And I did that for 2 weeks. And finally, one of them called me and said, "You seem really keen. Why don't you come in for an interview?" So I went in for an interview, got the job, worked in the mine sites for a while. And I worked at a place called near a place called Marble Bar, which is one of the hottest places in Australia. One day it was 52 degrees Celsius, which I don't know what that translates into Fahrenheit for the US listeners. I'm sure someone can work it out.
I'm literally looking at it.
And it's hot. Freaking hot. Yeah, it's freaking hot. So what did it work out to be? Because I know it's bloody hot. Although it wasn't too bad because it was a dry heat. It was a desert heat. It's kind of like your Phoenix area. Just really, really dry. Or there wasn't not even enough water for cactuses. It's just very dry.
I did
that for a little while. And then
in 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Dear
there you
God,
go.
that's hot.
Freaking hot. Yeah. And I used to go for runs in the morning too. So I'd get up in the morning before it got really hot and go for a run. So I got a little bit homesick. So I came back to Victoria where I grew up, and I thought about it, and what my dad had said about education was when you get to that age and you start realizing what your parents said was intelligent, and it's even worse when you start quoting them and selling other people what your parents told you. But I went and I studied commerce, law, and accounting. I wouldn't recommend any of those for fun, but would highly recommend certainly some accounting knowledge, some law knowledge for life. And when I was doing, I used to do some part-time training, teaching people. The other thing I added to that is the most critical skill you can learn is people skills. Because if you can't interact with people and get people to do things, then nothing really happens other than you doing it yourself. So I did that. I went and worked in, which I wanted to do. I wanted to work in corporate recovery, which was, I can liken that to, for those who remember the movie Pretty Woman, it was like Richard Gere taking over companies, selling them off or breaking them up and selling them off. I had hair back then, for those who've seen my profile picture. So I kind of look like liken myself to that. And then some opportunity came up to do some things myself. So I branched out and started my own consultancy where I went out and did similar sort of work in the corporate recovery space, and then that transitioned to helping other companies in other areas. Did a fair bit of work in construction with construction companies, helping their projects perform better. And I translated a lot of the skills because when I worked in corporate recovery, I worked with so many companies. I had to walk into a company, take control of it immediately, and make it work. So I learned a lot of skills as to how to get a business to perform. And from there, and I've sort of distilled that down into making things happen really, really, really quickly within both companies and with people. So it can make massive change really quickly for a company to be more profitable, be a better place to be an employee, which is really important in today's in today's environment with the demographics that have shifted, with all the baby boomers retiring, there's less employees to choose from. As an employer, you need to have a culture that is inspiring for employees to be at. And so we've got a number of programs where we work on that. And one of the programs that we're working on with a friend of mine business partner, she and I have a program called We Leadership, which is about embracing both the feminine and masculine together. So it's coming from that prospect of, if you actually embrace, and this is coming back to quoting my parents. My mum used to say, men and women are different. They both have strengths. By coming together, you become so much more. And so we're embracing that philosophy of teaching both the feminine and masculine traits so you can actually become more. And in a practical example, take negotiation. I have a program called Negotiation Magic, which is a really high-end negotiation program. And with that, an example is, it's a natural male trait to be assertive. That's commonly what is a masculine trait. In negotiation, you want to be assertive because you want to be holding on to your position. You don't want to be taken off your position to somewhere that doesn't work and is not going to be viable for you. Same token on the other side is you have women have a natural trait of empathy. So they listen, they understand. When you combine those two, so in negotiation, understanding the others, what the people that you're working with want, having a deeper understanding, being able to feel what they want, not just listen, not just see, but actually feel it. When you embrace that empathy and you combine that with the assertiveness, you become an extremely powerful negotiator, and the best negotiators in the world operate from the feminine and masculine. So we've brought that into how we operate. And then from there, I also had the opportunity, a friend of mine, he was a very wealthy businessman, and him and his wife wanted to set up a foundation to help prevent family violence, the Family Peace Foundation, and we were talking about that. It was something that I connected to a lot, that I wanted to help with as well. And he appointed me as the CEO to set up that organization for them. And the board expected me to do it in, I think, roughly about 18 months to 2 years. And I did it in about 8 months, got it up and running, which they were really impressed with. But while I was doing that, I noticed in the research that we were doing was if you wanted to, for example, if you wanted to learn to speak well, there's Toastmasters, for example. If someone has an alcohol problem, there's Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you go to the Alcoholics Anonymous website, for example, in Australia, for most people within 7 kilometres or 3.5 miles of where you live, there'll be an AA meeting happening that night. But when I was looking in the family space, if you've got a family problem, you can get help from a counsellor or something like that, but that costs a lot of money. They have, in Australia, they have Relationships Australia, which is really a government organisation. It's a government organisation that's really there for people that are going through the court process. You can go and get help from them, and it's quite economically viable, but you've got a 3 month waiting list roughly to get an appointment. And I thought, what if there was an organisation like the Toastmasters, like the AAs, where it's set up in a way that people can just replicate that? And that's where the idea for Share.care came from, was to create a global organisation that shares experience, strength and hope to create strong, healthy, inspiring relationships. So we took all the research and distilled it down into the 10 principles that create a strong, healthy, inspiring relationship. And then we took it a step further and said, what if we had an overarching guiding set of principles? And when we're looking at that, for a house we looked at, we went, well, the Knight's Code of Chivalry was a great inspiration. So we rewrote what we called the code and made it gender neutral. And have that as a guiding set of principles. For example, one of the principles is to laugh at yourself and not take offense at the opinions of others. Just a simple thing, which is really interesting. It changes your whole philosophy because, when you go out and hear people talk and go, oh, I'm offended by what you just said. And if you have the approach of, well, you are entitled to your opinion, and I'm confident enough in myself to not even be bothered by if you say something about it. It's kind of like you calling me a Volkswagen Beetle. So what? And it really changes the perspective on how you approach. So that's how all that came together. And then from Share.care, we have the podcast, which is, we're approaching 200th episode, which is really fantastic to have that and have the support that we've had with that and the people that have reached out and loved what we're doing. It's a long form type podcast. So, we did a subset called What is Manly, because we were trying to find the framework for what is manly, because a lot of men and boys are lost, or the research shows that they're lost, lonely, and not feeling useful in society. So we thought, well, what is the framework for that? And we wanted to interview men and women to try and work out what makes a man a man. What is manly? And it was really interesting that there was a common theme from men and women that came through the interviews that we did. Was one, in particular, was that there was a lack of role models for boys and men, particularly boys that don't have a father around. And so we thought, well, what if we create a hub of inspiration? There's a lot of great people out there doing great work. What if we put, just create a hub where you can have one place where people can go, there's so-and-so over here that they can connect with, or someone over there. And the other point that came out of it was being manly. And it was put wonderfully. I think it was Jack Kammer from America who put this out. He just said there's 3.97 billion men on the planet. There's 3.97 billion ways of being manly. Being manly is about being true to yourself, behaving true to yourself. And so that's what we wanted to do, is create a hub of inspiration where we can inspire boys and men to be themselves. Just be you, because especially if you're in, operating, or if you want to be an employee, if you want to be a business owner, the best thing that you can do is be yourself, because there's no one else like you. If you're you, then you have a complete unique marketing tool, because there is no one that is like you. And that's where we coined the word authenticity. You want to, not authenticity, authentic. You want to be authentic, where you're authentic. So we call it authentism, where you are authentic to who you are and take that out into the world. So that's a snapshot actually of my journey. There's a whole point where I worked in marketing and did a whole bunch of other stuff and things like that in there as well. I was actually also at I did some film and television work. I went to the same acting school as Hugh Jackman when Hugh Jackman was there. He wasn't Wolverine then, but he was a really lovely guy. And so there's a lot of other bits and pieces in there, but that's probably the main thread of my background.
So before we get into, because I've got a question I'm dying to ask, but before we get into that one, who are some of the influences that you have found you've either modeled some of your journey or some of your current work after, or that you refer to their material when maybe you're feeling off course from, the journey that you've picked for yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I love that you've asked that. And I remember when I was younger, when I was in the army, I did things a little bit differently, because you asked, what do you do and how do you get all this stuff done? Is for my leave, when you have your holiday leave for employment, there's one time there I had 2 weeks leave. I flew to the other side of the country for my leave and did a neurolinguistics program. That was my leave. So I studied that. I have attended a Tony Robbins course when he came out here as well. But what was really interesting when you say, where do I go to for that? And it's, for me, what I've done is very early in the piece. I can't remember what it was. When I was a kid, and for those who are old enough to remember, I wanted to be Knight Rider was one of my favorite shows. And myself and my friends. Yeah, so I even had a Knight Rider ID. I was Knight Rider. So I'd be walking around the school, and my friend was, I think, the Fall Guy. I was Knight Rider, and I can't remember someone else. I think it was BJ and the Bear was one of the other shows that was on at the time.
Kit is still the coolest car, I think, on any TV car. Kit beats all of them. I had to throw that in there.
Yeah, 100%. Kit is there, and even the evil version of Car is
Car was so cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, Darth Vader's cool, Car is cool.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
I have a 14-year-old son, and he identifies with Darth Vader, so it's like, yeah, okay, I get it.
Car was
there's a coolness.
One of the things that made Car so cool is we we sound we're probably roughly about the same age. I remember falling in love with Transformers growing up. And I loved Optimus Prime. Well, the voice of Optimus Prime, who's voice actor Peter Cullen, did the voice of Carr.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
So I'm like,
I love that. That's an awesome story, isn't it?
Two of my favorite, vehicles are voiced by the same guy. So, I mean, all right. So we both just nerded out right there, but I'm sorry, you were.
We can nerd out. Yes. Michael Knight.
Yes, you were giving your great answer, and I jumped in there with Kit and Michael Knight trivia, but sorry about that.
No, but you're highlighting the point there that this was the thing as a kid. We look to these people for inspiration, but for my journey, it was I had that, and we all do that. And I was looking at, when you look at a lot of movies, the way the movies are written, and it's because for some reason within inside us, we feel we're lacking. So we want to emulate that. We want to emulate that hero because for some reason we believe we're lacking. I'm not sure. Don't remember exactly where it is, where it happened. But I made the shift of, instead of going, I want to be inspired by this person, I'm going to be the Damian Andrews. That is who I'm going to be. And that transition happened in a number of different ways. As one, I have my own personal mission statement, which is to enjoy life and share in the joy of others, to learn something daily that helps me had to be overachieve, and to confidently and compassionately act from my values of honesty, excellence, and understanding. And from that, and there was another shift that I had, because they say the boy doesn't become a man until his father dies. Now, my dad, died for me. He's still alive, and we have a fantastic relationship. But there was a time there where I was in between houses. I bought a house, sold a house, and it didn't line up, and I was staying with my dad. And I was in the kitchen, and this is not a plug for a particular brand of chips, but I bought my own food, and I bought some Pringles chips, and I was eating them in the kitchen. Now, my dad's quite frugal, and he normally buys the no-name brand of chips. And so he walked in the kitchen, I'm eating Pringles, and he said to me, "What do you buy them for? They're expensive." And I didn't get defensive. I didn't justify. I just owned it and said, "I like them." And he goes, "Yeah, but they're expensive." And I said, "Yeah, but I like them." Again, not defensive, not anything, not needing to justify. It was just, this is who I am. And he kind of looked at me and nodded his head. And it was almost, we shared this thing. He goes, it was like, "You're an adult now. You can make your own choices." And our relationship shifted from that point and now we have, he wrote me, he was on a board and he wanted to resign from the board, and he wrote me a letter and sent it to me and said, "Look, can you just proofread this for me?" And we have that relationship where we bounce up. We don't speak all the time. Sometimes we won't speak for months because we're busy doing our own thing, but we have a completely different relationship. And that's where I made that shift. One of the other key things that I had was I was fortunate enough to have some really, really good mentors in business. And one of the mentors I had was Greg Larson, who was the managing director and chairman of BP. And I would always ask him for advice, and usually by text, because getting on the phone was difficult. And I'd send him a message by text, and I think he'd respond 2 or 3 days later, which I think he deliberately did to make me think about it first before he responded. But I had this meeting coming up, and I was really worried about it. And I think I must have expressed that in the meeting. And I wrote to him and I said, I was worried about, can I speak to you about it straight away? Because it's coming up quickly. And he responded straight away, which was unusual. But he wrote to me and he said, "Damian, I think you should back yourself that you'll make the right decision in the moment."
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that was probably the most powerful advice I ever got. That doesn't mean you'll make, if things are going to go well or go as planned.
Right.
But just back yourself in the moment that you will choose the right thing to do in that moment, the best that you can do in that moment. Because I think someone once said to me, whatever, in the moment you did the best that you could with the knowledge you had. Always in hindsight, you can look back and do it better, but you didn't have that hindsight knowledge in the moment. And so going out into the world now, whenever I need that source of strength, I turn to my mission statement. What is it that guides me? And this is what we're heading into, where we talk about being manly. It's be you. And so what is you? And that becomes your source of strength. And that's become my source of strength. And I go out there and go, one, I'm going to back myself because I'm freaking awesome. I don't walk around telling everyone, I just said it, but I don't, have this puff out my chest, tell everyone I'm awesome. But it's just that belief that you exist, that you are a wonderful person. And separating behaviors from the person. I remember years and years ago, I was helping out at a friend's wedding, and I was at the front of the church helping people, and there was a place for the bridal car to pull up. Now, it wasn't marked, and someone pulled up and parked there coming to the wedding. They thought, oh, parking spot right in front of the church. And so I've stormed over and yelled at the guy and go, what the hell are you parking there for? Where's the bride going to park? Whoa! And, he's obviously upset by me having a go at him. His partner's probably not too impressed either. Surely not impressed. He's moved the car. And I can look at that and beat myself and go, that was such a poor way to behave. And it was. But I was looking after the bride, was in my mind. And when I look at that experience, I go, well, I'm a good person. My behavior, yes, I can improve my behavior, and I'm constantly looking about my behaviors, but it's separating the behaviors from who you are. Who you are is a big ball of light that is capable of anything that you put your mind to. Your behaviors, you only got what the experience is that you had. And growing up, my parents were certainly not, they had a lot of wonderful things, but same token, there's a lot of things that weren't so wonderful, and I needed to learn from that. And this is part of that journey as well, is remembering that you are this amazing thing, amazing being. You exist. You're amazing. Yes, you might have things you need to improve, and that's okay. That's part of, your journey as a person, is to go through that. But that was, from my perspective, coming back to answering that question, is I was always about, or not always, but for a long time have been, I'm going to be the best Damian Andrews there is. And from Greg's advice was, in any moment, I'll back myself that I'm going to make the right decision. And if I need to learn from that, if I do something that's not great, then I'll adjust and address it. If I need to apologize for something, and because I've done something in a way that I maybe could do better now, I'll deal with that then. And that served me really, really well.
What are 3 qualities that you feel every man should either have or strive to have to be the best man he can be? A lot of times people say confidence, humor, adaptability, resilience, so on. So what would be 3 that you could list that, our listeners can analyze, see if they have it or find it?
Expand that to 5.
Okay.
Because from being manly, we power is to be courageous.
Oh, Damian, hold on, wait.
intelligent.
I lost you
Yeah.
after you said you were going to do 5. You went silent. So if you listed some already, if you could just start that over.
Yeah, so the point there I was getting to was what I was talking about then was saying, as a man, you have great power. And what I wanted to highlight from that point then as well, because women have great power too. And sometimes when you say that, you'll say, then people say, well, yeah, but what about women, or whatever it is that you're in. And the example I would use for that is if you said a car is a mode of transport, and someone goes, well, what about a horse as a mode of transport? Well, the point was not about listing out all the things or saying that if you say a car is a mode of transport, you weren't saying that a horse isn't. But some people jump on that. And that's where I'm bringing that up, because when you have those conversations with people and someone will jump on it and say, well, hey, this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about in the framework, in this context, all people have power. That is correct. In this context, we're talking about men. And from that perspective, men have great power. And from that perspective, the purpose of that power is these traits from being manly is what we put forward, is that 1 is to be courageous, 2, to be intelligent, to be sensitive, kind, and compassionate. And that's what that is. And the first part, I think, the first one, courageous, is the challenge, because what courageous means is that you'll stand up for what you believe in regardless of what other people may think. And to take that to the extreme, look at Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in jail to hold on to what he believed in. And when everyone else was against that, when his society was against that. And that's where courage is really important. Courage is about holding on to what is right for you, regardless of what anyone says. And that's where, when people talk about confidence, that's where confidence comes from, is having that ability to stay true to you, which comes back to that point of being yourself, being authentic, as we call it. So courage, compassion, intelligence, kindness, and sensitivity.
Now, one of my favorite questions to ask guests, which most guests tend to tremble at, in keeping with the theme of sexiness, what is the sexiest thing about you?
Yeah, Jen never quotes numbers, but I'm super sexy and super attractive. There is
I like it.
I think one of the things that comes with that is, people talk about confidence, but I think the most super sexy thing that you can be is, again, being yourself. Be confident in who you are. Be true to yourself. Embrace your authenticity. Be you. That is sexy. Is it as sexy to everyone else? No. You're not going to be 100% sexy. I mean, if for those who, I know you're an American and you have a very strong God-believing there, and I grew up Catholic. I can't be Catholic anymore because I don't feel guilt. But, but when you look at that, you go, so I forgot where I was going with that. So with that confidence in, being you, your uniqueness, you have, so where I was going with that was, even if for those that, from that religious background, when you look at, say, Jesus, for example, because I have that Catholic upbringing, even Jesus had his haters. So the point of being you is not you're going to appeal to everybody. That I mean, if you look at the cover of GQ magazine and whoever's the sexy person that they put on that, if you showed that to 10 women, you'd be pretty certain that some of them are going to say, no, I don't find him sexy. So and what is not sexy, maybe that's the way to answer the question, is trying to be sexy to everyone. Doesn't work. Be you, and you will be sexy to the people that relate to you. And that works really well. And you'll find your tribe, you'll find the people that you connect with. And certainly from a guy perspective, if you're looking for that, the relationship with a woman, or even if you're looking for a same-sex relationship, but if you are confident in who you are, you'll be sexy to the people that relate to you.
People, it's time for the quick game where we like to give our guests a chance to run through some entertaining questions. Damian, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's get the timer going.
Here we go. Which would you prefer to have as a roommate, a goat or a bird?
Oh, they're difficult. That's difficult because one's going to poop everywhere and the other one's going to eat everything. I'll go with the goat because I don't like poop.
Together, the bird will poop and the goat will eat it. But yeah, okay. So I'm sorry, your answer was the goat?
Yeah, go with the goat.
I'd love to hear your answer on this one. If you were an artist, what would you paint on your first day?
Oh, an ink blot, because then it can be anything.
Favorite time of day?
Morning.
Yeah,
morning.
I was going to guess.
I love but I want to couch that with, I remember Pooh Bear talked about, he was talking to Piglet and said, what day is it? And Piglet said, today. And Pooh Bear goes, my favorite day. And that's kind of how I feel about the day. I mean, every part is my favorite because I'm alive and I can do something with it.
Well, they say that's why it's called the present, because it's a gift, right?
Exactly. But I love that. So I have that picture of Pooh Bear in that conversation going, what day is it? Today. It's my favorite day.
If you have 2 extra hours to your day, what do you use them for?
The same as I use the rest of it. I'd love to have, my days are long. I do 14-hour days roughly anyway. And I just continue doing the things that I do because I love doing it. I balance my day well. I have fun with my family. I have fun doing the work that I do, and I don't like to call it work, but it's so people can relate to that. I just enjoy doing the things that I do because it has an impact. I run a radio station, so I'm the DJ on that radio station as well. So I have fun doing that. After this, I'll be writing the script for the next show. So I have a balanced day, which I really love, sharing that experience, all the different experiences I have in the day with people, and also my solitude time as well. I do what's called gumping at the beach house. I'm at the beach house at the moment. There's massive lawn, and I bought myself an electric self-propelled mower. I have to walk behind it, and I don't have to push it. And I'll go out there and just have my little solitude, and I'll do what's called gumping. I'm Forrest Gump going up and down the lawn, just having space to myself.
I like that, gumping. What flavor of ice cream would you be?
Chocolate Royale.
If you could only have one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Chocolate Royale ice cream.
Can you name 4 of the 7 dwarves?
Grumpy, Sneezy, Sleepy, and Dopey.
Very good. A lot of people get stuck on that one. It's surprising. And lastly,
I love the movie Snow White and Mary Poppins for 2 reasons. Because they didn't know dopamine existed, but they taught you what you needed to do to have an amazing day every day. In the movie Snow White, when Snow White and the animals are cleaning the house, they sing "Whistle While You Work." In Mary Poppins says to the kids, in every job that must be done, there's an element of fun. Find the fun and the job's a game. But what we realize now, and if you take that, especially for your listeners, this has been my key takeaway, is if you are ever feeling down, think a happy thought. Your body will immediately start producing dopamine and you'll start to feel better.
I feel bad because I just remember supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Lastly, but not least, in my favorite question, who inspires you?
I think I'm going to come back to that quote from Greg Larson, a mentor of mine, who said, back yourself that you'll make the right decision in the moment. And I always come back to that. And when I'm doing something, whenever I feel every day, when I'm doing something, there'll be times where I've got to do something and I'll feel, can I do this? And it'll be something that I've probably done 100 times before. Can I do it now? And it's like, well, no, I'm just going to back myself. And I start doing it and I get it, smash it out really quickly. So that would be where I'm inspired by that quote, is just back yourself that you will make the right decision in the moment.
Good people, sexy people, that wraps up our interview with, once again, the brilliant, the powerful, the patient, and the driven Damian Andrews. Damian, thank you so much for working out this time, because I know we've been doing time zones, and we'll see you back here again. Thank you so much.
Well, yeah, before we go, I just wanted to add, you asked about being sexy, and there's a joke that goes around that you're in the casino and there's this guy there, he's dressed up in a suit and he's got this cocktail and he's talking to all these women, and someone points and says, "Who's that guy?" They said, "Oh, that's just James Bond. He's trying to be Damian Andrews."
Folks, he's also...
Believe in yourself, guys. Believe in yourself. You are awesome. Believe in yourself.
He's also a stand-up. I love it. Damian, thanks so much, man. You take care.
You too. Have a wonderful day.